Hey guys, this video is going to be a little bit different, and it is going to focus on my actual opinions and views on things related to Mod 16. I saw quite a few people commenting like, how are you able to be so positive about this whenever it's like the world is ending? Well, no one said that specifically. You get the idea. There's a few reasons for that. But most importantly, it's not really about being positive. Like, that wasn't the focus of my videos. The focus of my videos is to be informative about the current state of things so that you guys are all aware, especially if you aren't able to access preview because either you don't have a space to download it, or you're play on console, or any other reason. I'm generally a positive person. I don't like to be pessimistic about things. I try to at least try to see things from the other perspective a lot, and so I like to play devil's advocate in some sorts of conversations because it just sort of widens people's perspective sometimes and allows them to try and see things from other points of view and maybe understand why things are the way they are. I won't say that I'm not positive in my videos. I absolutely am to some degree positive about a lot of stuff. That is because whenever I first saw this module, that was back in January, and for those of you who don't know, I was one of the few people who were in the early access program for Mod 16, and there's a separate video about that coming, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But whenever we got our hands on the game, it was so different than what you guys are seeing now. It was so much worse, it was in a much earlier stage of development. There weren't even tooltips that accurately said what the powers even did. There were new powers that had the old style of tooltips that were inaccurate. There were tooltips that didn't say anything at all. And throughout the playtest process, I saw a lot of growth in a short amount of time. And here we are at the preview stage, the early stage of the preview stage. There is still quite a bit of time before this mod is going to go live. So the reason that I'm able to stay so positive is because I saw the changes that were made, the drastic amount of changes that were made in a short amount of time, and I am certain that it can happen again. They can do even more drastic changes and fixes before it's time for it to go live. Do I think it's going to go live without any problems? No. I think there's absolutely going to be problems. Am I happy with everything that's in Mod 16? No. No, I'm not. To answer my own poll question, I would still answer yes. Why? Because although I'm not happy with certain specific aspects of classes or how certain things are done, the over-encompassing plan for Mod 16 I am very happy with. I think that the changes to the buff meta, the burst meta, if you want to call it that, of DPS, that needed to change. Tanking and healing needed to become a bigger part of the game again. Being the author of a cleric guide, I'd often get questions asking me like, so how do I heal? And I'd have to explain, well, you don't really heal in this game. And sometimes I'd get responses like, well, what's the point of being a cleric if you can't heal? Like, you get the point. People were confused because the generally accepted purpose of the role that they had chosen was not something that had a place in the game. And that was something that definitely needed to change, and the removal of lifesteal was necessary for this. As for recovery, I can't say that I was happy about it when I first heard about it. A lot of these changes, when I was reading them, I was just like, in my head, I was just like, oh no. Oh no. How are they going to pull this off? That was the main thought that went through my head this entire time during the playtest process, or like before we got our hands on Mod 16, because we got information before we had access to the actual server, so those days while we were waiting for the server to open, I was just like, oh no, please don't be terrible. I want to keep playing this game. And I am. I'm still going to be playing in Mod 16. In fact, I'll probably be playing more than I did in Mod 15. I hated Mod 15. Hated it. I hated everything about it. The Professions update was okay, although I didn't care a whole lot about it, because I'm not a main Professions type person. I still have not completed the campaign at all on the live server, and probably won't until it's added to the challenge campaigns in Mod 17, I'm guessing is how they're going to do it. I am going to go through a bunch of general concepts of Mod 16 and explain my general views and thoughts on those, but I do want to start with the most positive thing Like the thing that I absolutely love about Mod 16, and that is the art. I've said this numerous times before, I'm going to say it again. The art is amazing. If you haven't gotten to explore all the different zones yet, you absolutely should, because they're just so pretty to look at. I walk around and I just take screenshots for thumbnails and stuff, and it's just, I just want to keep looking at it. I want to save them as wallpapers. They're beautiful. And the art team is not given enough credit. Sure, they don't program very much stuff. They don't code how the game they don't code how the game works, but they are responsible for what you see whenever you play the game, and that is a very big portion of a game. Some people don't think graphics are a big part of the game, but then you get other people who are mainly focused on the graphics. They'll judge whether they want to play a game or not, judging based on what type of game it is and what it looks like. The art team has done an amazing job with designing the levels and the maps, and I am very happy with how it turned out so far. Now, the next hot topic, or rather the first hot topic, is going to be classes and class balance. And a lot of that is going to be addressed, I think, on Thursday during the Reddit AMA for systems. And I am going to have a video on that too, so if you don't feel like reading all the comments, I can summarize the main points and the things that the devs responded to, and where things are going to go based on the AMA, but that's not the purpose of this video. How do I feel about classes and the class balance, I guess, so far? And whenever I first got my hands on this Mod 16, I was so confused, as I imagine the majority of people were. I had no clue what to do. I had no clue what anything was anymore. It was all so different. It felt like I was playing a completely different game. Then I was going to have to relearn everything about every class. And I did, for the most part. Especially tanks and healers, because those received the most changes. I was just so unhappy whenever I wouldn't say unhappy. Worried is a better word. Because I wasn't sure how they were going to pull off this huge, large-scale changes, along with a level cap increase, and not make everybody quit the game. But as far as the classes themselves go, I do think reworks were necessary, but I definitely think there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made before it goes live, especially with the tab powers of tanks, specifically Paladin and Fighter, because for the most part, that's pretty useless. Class balance is something that I can't give a whole lot of opinion about because I don't play all the classes. I have played all the classes in Mod 16, but that doesn't mean I've done group content with them. For the three main classes that I was focusing on myself in Mod 16, which is Cleric, Paladin, and Fighter, it's really hard for me to be negative. I don't know. Another hot topic is ability scores, and the fact that all ability scores are universal for all classes in terms of what they actually do, and there are no primary or secondary ability scores. And the ability scores that a lot of classes were accustomed to taking are no longer what they normally take. Like, one example is Clerics and Wisdom. In D&D, I don't play D&D, but in D&D, Clerics are their primary ability score is Wisdom, and you always wanted to focus Wisdom. And that was the case in Neverwinter as well until Mod 16, and now Wisdom is basically useless for Clerics. There's no outgoing healing bonus even, or anything like that. All Wisdom does now is increase your incoming healing and your control resistance. And I know there was a bit of an upsetness? Yeah, about that. And I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I like that some of the ability score bonuses were changed, like to add to magical or physical damage, and the one that has companion stat bonus and recharge speed, charisma. Like, I like those, but I think that they should be... It's hard to say how I feel about the ability score change. Because for me, it's just something that changed, I'll deal with it. But for a lot of other people who are really into the lore and stuff, it's going to upset them because, like, that's just not how it's supposed to be. And if we aren't granted, like, race rerolls, or some way to reroll our initial ability score rolls, that's going to make even more people mad. This is going away from my opinions about Mod 16 and going into, like, other people's opinions about Mod 16. So let's get back on track. As far as the powers are concerned, I do like that the layout of the screen is a lot more clean. Talking about feats, though, as much as I hated all of the basically useless options that there were with the multiple feat trees, having only 10 feats does make it feel so much more dumbed down. Like you can't, it's basically restricting you to a couple ways of playing. Whereas if you really wanted to play a certain way before, even if the feats that you wanted to use weren't generally accepted as good, you could still do that if you wanted to. But now, the feats really only help a certain number of powers or like a certain mechanic or something like that. There's no real uniqueness to the builds that people are going to have. And that was something that was brought up a lot during playtests, and I'm getting into the playtest content, even though that's supposed to be in another video, but I do think it's relevant here. A lot of people in the playtest were saying about how the feats feel so much more dumbed down, or we need more options, or we need more unique options. And that was something I definitely agreed with, because having only 5 feats makes builds so basic. Like, before, you could just, if you just guessed at what feats you chose, like if you literally just put points into random ones, there was a pretty good chance that your build wasn't going to be very good. However, now you have a 50-50 chance of picking a correct feat for a pair. Or not correct, really, because the feats aren't, for the most part, the feats aren't a huge game changer. It's so much more difficult to make a bad build now. And that's going to lower the necessity of guides once people get used to the new playstyle of the classes, of course. But not only that, but people are going to feel so disappointed when they see how few options they have for playstyles. I do really wish we had more feat options. But I don't think that's something that's going to change, honestly. I don't think that even any amount of feedback or criticism is going to change that system, because we had talks about how to make them more impactful, because a lot of them were not very useful before, and there were a lot of changes to feats to make them more impactful, but not the number of them. Now, another topic is boons. Boons is something that I can't say I'm very happy with, because before you had so many different options for boons that would increase your various stats, give you passive bonuses like healing, or get stacks of something to deal damage after you reach a certain number of stacks, and so on. Now, they did say that they were reducing those number of effects to lower the load on the servers, and that is something I can understand. However, what they replaced it with is just very bland and very basic, and basically, like I said before, restricts players and their creativity and their playstyles. Do I like some of the boons? Yeah. But you have so many boon points at the end where you basically have points in almost every single boon, because you can only have 2 of this tier, only 1 of this tier, and then you're left with, for me, I have 65 boon points on the preview server, and there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are only 8 boons that I don't have points in. And I could have points in those boons if I wanted, if I didn't want to have something maxed out. It's possible to have points in every single boon. Where's the customization in that? If you can have points in every single boon, why even bother choosing something that might be useful for your build and not useful for another build? There's no uniqueness to them. It's all stat increases, damage resistance to a certain type of enemy, damage to a certain type of enemy, healing potion related, and then 1 utility option for each tier. That's it. I do wish the master boons were once every 20 seconds instead of every 10 seconds. That way, your effects have a 50% uptime. That seems pretty reasonable to me. And I also wish they were a little bit more impactful. Having that lower internal cooldown would make them more impactful, of course. But if you look at a master boon, if you have a master boon, just looking at the name, master boon, you expect a master boon to be something really good or really impactful, right? And a lot of these choices are just not really impactful. Or only the 3rd tier is good. And the 3rd tier is the one you get after 60 boon points, so that's the one after you've gotten almost every single boon in the game. So after spending all that time doing campaigns, all that time getting boon points to get something that's not super useful, it's kind of upsetting and disappointing. It's off-putting that you spend all that time doing something for something that's not worth it. There was a lot of, I don't want to say jokes, because it wasn't a joke, But there was a lot of comments during playtest how you could just not select any boons and do just the same as if you had put points in all the boons. And that used to be the case. The boons used to be way worse than they are now. However, I still feel like for the most part that is the case. There's not any real game changer boons out there right now. Sure, there's some that might be useful, but those are very few, like the action point gain and recharge speed boons. You don't get those bonuses anywhere else. So having those in boons, you're basically going to always want to put points in them unless you're focusing on outgoing heals, or like if you're a divinity spending class, maybe you want to focus on outgoing heals instead of recharge speed. Okay? Or stamina regen if you're a paladin, maybe. I don't know. But some of them just feel useless. Now, please understand that this is not... I don't know how to say this without sounding weird, but I love the developers as people. I love the entire team at Cryptic. They're great people. They're just doing their jobs to the best of their ability with the time, resources, and assets that they have available to them. They're doing what they're told to do. And I think a lot of people forget that whenever they're making criticisms about the game, because they just blame everything on the developers and not the people who are actually telling the developers what to do. I guarantee you that the developers want to do different things with some aspects of this game. They have ideas for how they want to make it better, but then their ideas get turned down for maybe they don't have enough time, or they don't have time to do the art for X thing, or they'd want to do something that takes less time to make and maintain instead of this nice idea that somebody else had. And a lot of people forget that. A lot of people seem to forget that the developers are people just like them, and if they got hate literally every day, imagine if you got hate every single day, all day long, and you had to deal with people's feedback like that. That's like working in customer service. Nobody likes to do that, but that is just my opinion at the end of the day. Another thing I do want to mention is mount bonuses, specifically the legendary ones, because if you look at a companion, like a blue companion for example, we'll just say a blue companion has roughly 3,000 to 4,500 stat points on it, right? And then you look at a legendary mount that has 4,000 stat points on it. So this legendary mount that you either got really lucky with a lockbox or you spent millions of AD on, millions, like upwards of 10 million, and you only get 4,000 stat points, which is the same amount as a blue companion. Just let that sink in. One thing that I really want to see changed is I want to see the amount of stats from legendary equip powers doubled. Purple mounts are easy enough to get. Sure, they're not cheap, but they're significantly cheaper, and if you max your AD for like 2 days, you can buy one. But legendary mounts are extremely more rare, and they're more expensive, significantly. So getting the same amount of stats as a blue companion is not good. If I got 8,000 power from my Black Ice Warhorse instead of 4,000, I would think that's a lot more useful. And it frees up a lot of other enchantments maybe I could change to put in another stat or something. But this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to end it here, but I am going to say first that in general, my general outlook on Mod 16 is good, but I do think a lot of work still needs to be done before it's in a place where I can say that it's actually good. I hope that made sense, because that could be a little bit confusing. But thanks for watching, or listening, as you probably did, because there's not a whole lot to watch unless you want to watch me run whatever I decide to put on the screen right now. I appreciate you guys for listening to my explanation slash rant slash me talking nonsensically for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna find out if I actually covered everything that I wanted to. The Ranger class video is going to come out tomorrow at some point, and then the next video after that will be my experiences with the early access program, and then the next video after that will be the Reddit AMA summary. So if you made it this far and actually heard this part, I applaud you. Tell me if there's any other videos you want me to make. I do have a list of things that people have suggested to me, but I'm always willing to add to my list of suggestions because one day I might decide to make one of them. Once again, thanks. Thank you. Have a good day, guys. Have a good day.